I'll never forget the silence right after I stepped down from the stage, my words still hanging in the air like smoke nobody wanted to breathe. The faint whir of the projector, the shuffle of expensive shoes, and then finally a cough, delicate, as if to apologize for the inevitability of disappointment. There must have been 30 people in the conference room. I remember the glint of the chrome fixtures, the blank notepads, the lack of eye contact. My vision, I had said, is to open a studio for artists that will bridge traditional Japanese painting with modern abstract. Why, someone in the back had asked quietly. He worded it politely enough, but the disdain wasn't polite. What's the business model exactly? Art isn't revenue. Another man, glasses as sharp as his suit, gave a tiny, performative smile. Why not get a real job first? Each rejection framed as advice scorched a new mark into me. By the time I slid off the stage, my palms were burning, the sweat freezing on them as I tried not to meet anyone's eye. When I left and the doors closed behind me, the sound was startlingly final. Not just the end of the pitch, but the end of every hope I'd brought there from the shabby, paint-flecked room I called my studio. The rush-hour traffic below the window seemed like a river I'd never dare cross. I wandered that night, still in my wrinkled suit, bought for the occasion and already collecting creases around my knees. The city lights were gaudy and endless, making everything behind them, including me, seem small and uncertain. I found myself at a ramen stall under the Yamanote line. The steam cut through the night as I sat on a wobbling stool, eating alone. The old woman who ran the place asked if I wanted more bamboo shoots. I shook my head, and she gave me a look, as if she could see that the broth wasn't the only thing that was lacking. I came back to my family's apartment at nearly midnight. My mother sat on the floor in the living area, folding laundry in the television's blue flicker. My father, half asleep, could barely be bothered to turn his head. "Well," my mother asked quietly. "It didn't work out," I muttered. "Of course not," she said, not unkindly, as if confirming a truth known since childhood. "Paintings can't fill your stomach." My father grunted. "Kazuo, you need stability. Look at your brother, look at Satomi." I did look at my brother, and at my sister Satomi, both university-educated and successful, working in banking and government. Their wedding photographs adorned the bookshelf behind her. Solemn, posed, and prosperous. "We all have dreams," my mother said, "but at some point people must be realistic. You're not a child." It wasn't anger, it was something heavier. A kind of tired patience, as if she were waiting for the fever to break. I went to my room and lay staring at the ceiling, listening to the scratchy sound of the TV and the occasional bump of the washing machine. It was all so ordinary, so sure. I tried to tell my breath not to tremble. Years went by. The same days unspooled, mornings at the gallery sweeping floors, afternoons in my rented room with canvas and acrylics, painting until the light failed or my energy did. Nobody asked to see my work, not really. Sometimes a tourist bought a postcard. Most days I realized I hadn't spoken to anyone until night fell. I tried to believe the struggle meant something, but the seasons blurred. I learned to eat less, to mend my own clothes. The old woman at the ramen stand started giving me bowls on credit, small kindnesses, but they scraped against my pride. I spent rainy afternoons watching the city through the window, thick drops refracting neon, commuters huddled under umbrellas, never looking up. Sometimes I'd visit my family. Satomi would laugh, charming and practiced, still pursuing the starving artist life. "Kazuo, the world's moved on, you know." My brother would look at me with something like pity, eyes darting toward the door. My paintings, left with them as gifts, were stuck in storage or behind stacked boxes. "Why don't you at least try graphic design?" Satomi suggested once. "Or something useful." "I believe in this," I said. I wanted my voice steady. Instead, it sounded as tired as I felt. The worst part wasn't the poverty or even the hunger some nights. No, it was the sense that maybe everyone else was right. Maybe what I called clarity was just a stubborn refusal to wake up. Maybe I deserved the silence that greeted my work, but grief, I learned, is a cleaner fuel than self-pity. It stings, but it purifies. It was Yuto, my only friend from school, who changed everything. He came by my studio one evening, just when I'd nearly given up. His company ran a small interior decor business, and he'd heard somehow that a big hotel in Ginza was looking for modern Japanese paintings for their refurbishment. "They want something real, Kazuo," Yuto said, "not mass-produced stuff. The manager's hosting an open call tomorrow." I hesitated. I'd been rejected so often my body expected it before it came, but Yuto all but dragged me there. The hotel was far cleaner, brighter and more intimidating than any place I'd ever shown my portfolio. I handed over 3 paintings, hands shaking, and left without looking back. A week later, I was painting a landscape of fireflies over the Meguro River in my room. I'd forgotten about the hotel, then my phone buzzed, a number I didn't know. "This is Shimizu from the Sakura Ginza Hotel," a voice said. "We want to commission you for the entire 10th and 11th floors." The world slowed around me like a brush trailing water on paper. "Are you sure?" was the first thing I said. He laughed. "Your paintings, people can't stop looking at them. When can you start?" I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty, scraped clean. Only clarity was left, enough to work day and night, hands blistered, head pounding from lack of sleep. I painted folding screens, mural-sized panels, delicate abstract seascapes. I painted sorrow and hope and the city skyline at dusk, and an old woman offering more bamboo shoots in a field of gold. When the exhibition opened to guests, my name was stenciled on 2 walls. They called me Kazuo Sato, new voice of modern Nihonga. Magazine editors came. Interviews followed. I was paid more in a month than I'd earned in 5 years. I didn't rent a new studio right away. Instead, I worked later and longer, pouring everything I had into each painting. Strangers sent messages. "Your paintings made me remember my hometown. The light in that piece made me cry." The hotel started selling prints. Tourists snapped photos in front of my work. Galleries called next. Soon, articles about me showed up online, then in paper, a rarity. My parents heard, of course, not from me but from Satomi's colleague who recognized my photo in a glossy design magazine. My mother called, nervous, formal. "Is it true?" she asked, disbelieving. "You're featured." So I went home for dinner. That night the table was covered with dishes, carrage, lotus root, simmered daikon, my mother's best, reserved for holidays. My father wore a collared shirt. Satomi had come too, with her husband and baby. My brother lingered, distant but present. After we'd eaten, Satomi waved her phone. My colleague asked if I was related to the Kazuo Sato in the Ginza Hotel. Imagine their surprise when I said yes. What should I tell them? I knew the old jokes waited behind her smile. I looked at my family, really looked. My father's rough hands cradling his tea, my mother, fingers twisted from years of cleaning. My brother's nervous gestures and Satomi's restless poise. The room was smaller than I remembered, but somehow too big for old bitterness. "Tell them I just got lucky," I said quietly, and my mother's mouth trembled. Later, my brother brought out a box, my earliest paintings still wrapped, still untouched. "Maybe we should hang them up at last," he murmured. I didn't stay late. Tokyo rains had started again, and as I slipped out with my umbrella, I realized it was only the second time I'd cried in public in 10 years. The first time was 6 years earlier after my failed pitch. This wasn't like that. This was clarity, razored and bright. A month after, the hotel manager called me with another offer, an exhibition, but this time private, for investors and hotel partners. "Bring your family if you like," he said. "Let them see." I invited them. Reluctantly, they accepted. On the day of the opening, I stood just inside the imposing glass doors, watching the rain bead and trickle, my hands jammed in the pockets of my thrift store trousers. My parents crossed the carpet, awkward and blinking at the lights. My brother looked flushed at the grandeur. Satomi's husband kept smoothing his tie. My work filled the lobby, the hallways, and 2 display rooms, 30 canvases. Scenes of Tokyo, of the countryside, of loneliness and courage, transformed by patience and pigment. Skeptics and patrons mingled. I heard my mother's uncertain footsteps behind me. She paused, staring at one large canvas, the Meguro fireflies. She covered her mouth. "Did you really paint all this?" she whispered. "Yes." Satomi, cradling her child, studied a panel, a blurred river under moonlight. "It's beautiful." That's all I can say. At some point, 2 investors, old, well-dressed, remembering my pitch flop, found my father, who stiffened like a soldier caught out of step. "You're Kazuo's father?" one asked. "He's quite famous now, you know. His work adds so much value. Our hotel bookings are up 20%. My father's mouth twitched, almost embarrassed. He was always stubborn, the old man conceded, but perhaps it was for the best. The gallery manager beckoned me onto the stage. My family, pressed into a row along with bankers and hoteliers in tailored suits, watched as the crowd gathered, the applause polite at first and then startling in its sincerity. "Thank you for believing in art," I told them. My voice steadied in a way that had nothing to do with pride but with survival. When I climbed down, people surrounded my family. "You must be proud. He has such vision." My mother nodded, dazed and silent, her hand resting lightly on my father's sleeve. The rest of the night I spent near them, introducing old classmates, city workers, even former gallery bosses who'd once dismissed me. When we left, my brother gripped my arm. Kazuo, forgive me, we never understood. But today we saw it with our own eyes. You changed something. Later, my mother said quietly while waiting for a cab, sometimes being realistic is only another way to be afraid. I'm sorry. I walked alone through the city that night, every window burning with unknown lives. The grief I'd carried dulled into something weightless. The city felt different, less like a trial, more like a place where I could belong. I still paint in my small rented room. The hotel exhibitions brought me more commissions, but the work stays with me. I rise before dawn, mixing colors, chasing the thin line where night becomes day. The dreams are not so distant now. I paint my family into landscapes. I paint the ramen stall, steam rising like memory. I paint loneliness and I paint coming home. The city no longer mocks me. It bears the sound of my brushes, and sometimes I hear my own laughter, real laughter echoing down the block, mingling with the rain, proof that what was once ridiculous has become, quietly, beautifully, real.